All right, so today we're going to talk about building a composition. Okay, when I say building a composition, what I'm really talking about is taking various graphics, raster graphics. You can generate, find them. You can take your own photos with your phone, or you could generate them with AI, or find them in a place like Pexels or one of those other sites I was showing you where you can find royalty-free images that you can work with. And building the composition is like you're combining different elements together. Okay. The way I like to think of it is if you've ever made like a collage, a collage is like a mixture of different materials. Usually it's like, you may have made a collage with like magazine cutouts or newspaper cutouts or other craft elements like string or yarn or something along those lines. Or think about maybe cooking, where it's like, when you build, when you cook, you usually use more than one ingredient, right? So you're combining tomatoes and peppers and, various other elements together to form a more complex, palette, if you will, putting in things like, I don't know, garlic and, oregano and all that good stuff. So here's some, kind of examples of that. It's like, maybe there's you're building here's a Picasso from 1929 where he sort of combines drawing with newspaper and, some other elements that he kind of glued together. This is like a composition that's meant to be, you're building this person built it with pieces of, magazine and other kind of elements kind of glued together to form something a little bit, sort of a decoupage kind of thing. Now, this is in the physical sense, using physical pieces of newspaper or magazines or whatever. This is in the digital sense where it's like, okay, here's this person's project, and it's like, well, there's this photo of someone, maybe it's her, maybe it's someone else. And it's like, okay, there's a popcorn picture, there's a picture of a clock, there's this, uh, drawing of lips, butterflies, all that kind of interesting stuff. Same thing here, where this person's kind of mixing the photorealistic of the model with, these kind of more hand-drawn elements or digitally drawn elements kind of all put together. You can see like there's sort of different elements all kind of put together to form this overarching composition. Here, this is what we call compositing. These days, you would probably think it's AI, but compositing is when you take different photographs and try to combine them in a way that looks like it's, although they are from different sources, like the background might have been one photo and this person in a boat is the second photo. And, maybe there's some other elements like, I don't know, maybe the clouds are from another photo. You combine different elements together to make it look like one scene. It's not meant to sort of look like a collage or something where it's obviously different pieces. Instead, it's meant to mimic kind of like one general scene. So, how do you see this in the real world? Something like a poster where it's like, different photographs being combined with this photograph with other elements, or, something like this, where it's like you're combining text and an image and another image and some other elements here to, make the scene more interesting, to make the composition a little bit more interesting. So in other words, you're taking different photos, taking parts of them, and bringing them into this document here. Okay. So when we talk about this, let's think about this from the sense of let's say I had a let's say I have this document full of text. Okay. This is like imagine this is like Microsoft Word or something. I'm using or I'm using Google Docs, but it really doesn't matter. And let's like, here's our composition, right? And it's like, okay, I want this text of my article to be read. Or maybe like I want it to be, Times New Roman or Courier or something like that. How do I tell the program, in this case, Google Docs, that that's what I want to do? And the answer is, well, you have to select things. So here it's like, okay, if I make a selection, you can see that that's what this is. I am basically telling Google Docs that it's like, okay, this area I want to modify it in some way. Like I want to change the text color, or maybe I want to change the typeface from what it is currently to, I don't know, Courier New or something along those lines. Okay. So the point here is in order to let the program know what I'm trying to do, I had to make a selection. Okay. So I'm sure you guys are kind of used to that concept. And that's kind of what we're going to be doing here in Photoshop. The difference is rather than selecting, say, text, we're going to be selecting pixels, right? So I got this image here. Okay. And it's built out of pixels. And what I'm trying to do is work with some of the pixels of this document, but not necessarily all of the pixels. So how do I do that? Well, we're going to talk about different selection tools. In Photoshop, we have a bunch of selection tools here that we can play around with. And the first one we're going to talk about is if here in your toolbar, if it's the long one, it's the second from the top. If it's the double, it's the one on the right. This is what we call the rectangular marquee tool here. Okay, I'm going to grab it. I got this design. I'm just going to grab or highlight part of it. And you can kind of say I have this vibrating kind of, dotted line, dash line here. This is called my marching ants. They're called marching ants because they look like old school Warner Brothers cartoons where like they draw little ants and they're like little dashes. But anyway, what's happened is everything inside of this is a selection and everything outside of this is not selected. Okay. If you don't like your selection, you want to make a new selection, you could go to select, deselect, or Command or Control D to remove that. And I could draw a new selection. If you want to move your selection after you've created it, with the marquee tool selected, I could click and drag this around as such to move it. If you want to move it one pixel at a time, you could use the up, down, left, right arrow keys. Okay. And like I said, if you don't like your selection, you can always go to select, deselect, or Command or Control D. In Photoshop and newer versions, if you have a newer version, you can go to the deselect option from the contextual bar here. If you're not getting the contextual bar, I believe you get that under Window contextual taskbar. If you don't like it, you can turn it off here too. So I'm going to make a selection here, and then now that all the pixels inside are selected, I'm going to use the Move tool and move it around as such. When I'm done, I can go to Select, Deselect, or you hit the little button there and deselect what I did. I'm going to make a new selection, use the Move tool, deselect, make a new selection, use the Move tool, deselect, use the Move tool, deselect. Okay. So I'm getting kind of this, abstract piece of art here. I want you to notice that when I selected and deselected, I got these like really crisp cuts here. Do you see that? And what I'm going to do is let's do a revert. That takes me back to my last save point in Photoshop. And what I want to do is I want to have not such crisp cuts when I select, but rather kind of a blurred or kind of a fuzzy edge there. This is referred to as feathering. And what I'm going to do is under the feather option, I'm just going to type 10. Now you have to do this before you make your selection. It will not work after you make your selection. And what I'm going to do is click and drag. And when I use the move tool now, you can see that instead of getting those crisp cuts, I'm getting this kind of feathered edge. It's kind of like when you have like kind of chalk or craypa or charcoal and you kind of like smudge it a little bit. You know what I mean? To remove it, just set it from whatever number you gave it back to 0. And then when I go back and do it again, it will, remove that. Um, by default, when you make a rectangle, let's say I wanted to make a perfect square selection, I'm gonna hold down the Shift key, and you can see that it makes a nice perfect square. By default, you'll notice that when you make selections, it always seems to start in the upper left-hand corner. Computers usually work top down, left to right. This is because computers read code top down, left to right. Now, if you want to start from the center rather than the default, which would be the upper left, what I'm going to do is hold down the Option or the Alt key. Option on a Mac computer, Alt on a Windows computer desktop, keyboard, I mean. And I'm going to click and drag, and you can see now I'm going from the center rather than the upper left-hand corner. Now, you'll notice that anytime I'm making selections, it's always, kind of a rectangle or a square. You can actually increase your selection. So up here at the top, with my tool highlighted, you can see I have these four little kind of options here in my tool options up here. And I have new selection, add to selection, subtract from selection, and intersect. New selection, what that means is every time I click and drag with my selection tool, you can see that the old selection was deleted and the new selection was created. Okay, see that? Now, if I chose the second one here, which is called add to selection, what that means is every time I click and drag, you can see it's adding to the selection as opposed to replacing it with the new one. If I use the subtract one, all right, let me just show you that if I move it, you can see I'm making a complex shape here. I can use the subtract from selection, and if I use that, you can see it's cutting away. I can use this to make like holes inside of our object. I can also, if I make a selection, the last one here is called intersect. What intersect does is it keeps the selection, it keeps the part of two selections that are overlapping each other. So for instance, it's like, okay, if I have a selection and then I have another selection like this, you can kind of, this is kind of like a rectangle version of a Venn diagram, if you will. And you can kind of see where the two are overlapping each other, which is about right there. I can't let go, otherwise it won't automatically do it. And when I let go, you can see that that's the area that's being kept. All right, last one more thing, and then I'll let you guys try this out. Now, in Photoshop, in our toolbar, if there's an additional tool underneath one of our tools, you can access it by clicking and holding it, okay? The way you can tell if there's an additional tool in Photoshop is there should be like a little triangle in the lower right-hand corner. So if I click and hold, I'm going to get the one that says elliptical marquee. And the elliptical is basically the same as the rectangular, the difference being that rather than making a pre-made rectangle or square, it can make a oval or a circle. So if I click and drag, you can see I'm making an oval shape that I can move. So just like with the other one, it's like if I don't like my selection, I can go to select, deselect, or Command and Control D. I could also do this from the contextual menu, which is appearing down here. Um, like with the, I can use the move tool to move selections, deselect, use the move tool, deselect. I'm going to go to revert. Just like with the rectangular, if I don't want crisp cuts like that, I'm going to go under my feather option and maybe set that to 10 pixels. And then now when I make a cut and move, you can see how I'm getting those feathered edges there. To remove it, set it to 0. Like with the if I'm trying to make a perfect circle, just hold down shift, just like when we try to make a perfect square. And like with the rectangular, if you want to start from the center rather than starting the upper left, hold on the option or the alt key, and I can click and drag to start from the center there. Like with the rectangular marquee tool, I can take advantage of the new selection, add to selection, subtract, and intersect. So the new selection, just like the other one, means every time I click and drag, I'm making a new selection, replacing the old one. This one would allow you to add to the current selection. So I'm making little Mickey Mouse ears here. This would allow for subtraction from this. So if I were to cut holes through my object like such, finally, just like with the other one, I could do an intersect, which means if I were to make one selection and then make a second selection, it would keep the part where they overlap, which is that. Okay. All right. So why don't you guys try that out? That was exercise 1 and 2 in the files for today, please.